Hello there, traders. Hello there, traders. Welcome back to TOGS Trading Podcast. Here we are, TOGS TP number 45. Are you a good trading student? Okay. Every trader thinks they're a good student of both the market and as a trading student. But are you really learning, or are you just repeating the same mistakes? So today's episode, that's what we're going to look at. What makes someone a truly good trading student? So as always, I'm joined by Big Ian there in Dublin. How are you doing, Ian? Looking good, Billy Ray?
Surprised if I am looking good. I'm absolutely exhausted. I don't know, for the last few days, I just haven't slept that well, which happens to me every once in a while. I was always a little bit of an insomniac in some ways. So I'm a bit wrung out, but apart from that, I'm quite happy. And a nice day yesterday. There was a lovely double bottom in the ES that just exploded upwards. And that sort of made the week. I can screw up now every moment of the rest of the week and I'm fine. So I'm happy up.
So of course we're recording this 3rd of September, Wednesday, 3rd of September. So it has been back, and it has been a pretty full on eventful couple of days, especially not just for people who will trade like US indices like yourself, but also those who will trade FX and stuff. And certainly if like me, you're a sterling trader and stuff and what have you, there's been some big moves there and such and what have you. And we were just talking about it before that I was a little frustrated that I didn't get as many or as big a positions on it as I possibly did, because my morning system didn't give me the signal, or when it did, the market already made its move and done and stuff and what have you. And so it just goes to show that woulda, coulda, shoulda happens to all of us. And I've always been the way of I just don't chase markets. I don't chase markets. I don't just lump a position on. That's just not my style. I've learned over years. I'm happier in myself. All right, that I just basically have my simple rules, follow that, and that's a better way to do it. And then I have to deal with the frustration of not being as big as you want to be when a market makes a move like that. But there you go. As I say, woulda, coulda, shoulda. Takes all sorts, doesn't it?
It does. What a difference, because I was looking at it. I was just saying, as I was saying to you earlier on, like that to me was a complete big buy, like, because it was a lovely double bottom in GBP USD, and that's probably the most common setup that I do, and it's just gone to target now anyway. So there's not that much else you can do with it. You have to see if it breaks through the resistance and buy the pullback or whatever else. But it's just the difference between the two different systems, because there's a lot of people shorting it, and I'm sitting there thinking, oh, it could be a lovely buying opportunity. So takes us all to
make a market.
It
takes
does
two to make a market, and you're right. Okay, we all talked about double tops and double bottoms, and I will make sure that they one of them is penciled in for the remainder of Series 3. Just whilst you're here, ladies and gentlemen, right? TOGS TP 46. Okay, TOGS 46. Next one is all about hope is not a strategy. So why are you relying on it? Those of you who know me will know I'm always banging on about how hope is not a strategy. So that'll be. I think it's next week podcast, but today, as I said, is all about are you a good trading student? So, Ian, are you a good trading student? Were you a good student yourself? What's the story?
Well, I wasn't a good student in school, and I wasn't a good student in university. But with trading, yeah, pretty much, because I think anybody who's consistent in trading has to have been or is you're always a student of the markets, but you have to have been a good student of the markets to be consistent, because you had to learn like such a huge amount and sort your way through such a huge amount of information, especially as a independent private trader who's not being mentored, because you have to go through tons and tons of stuff. And the other thing too is the biggest thing I think when you're coming to learning trading is ego, because a lot of people are very egocentric with what they're learning, and I think that you have to get rid of your ego, because with your ego comes bias, and everybody loves bias. We're all biased to information that confirms our own position on things. So I think bias was so you have to control your ego, you have to control your bias to be a good student of trading. Because you have to learn as well that the market's the boss at the end of the day, and it is the one that's going to teach you what it wants you to do, or else it's going to be the one that just takes all your toys away. So I think from that position, that's what you need to be. And I think when I was in my big learning phase, because I would say I'm always in a learning phase all the time, I think that I was quite good with a lack of ego. So I tried to take everything, like if somebody had something to teach me that I had judged was a person who was worth learning from, I had no problem with learning from them, even if it meant that I had to throw out months of previous knowledge or techniques that I had learned. It's just because at the end of the day, it's about earning money. It's not about how you feel. It's not feelings don't earn anything. They don't succeed anywhere. It's about learning a skill. It's not, if you took up deep sea diving or something, you were one of those whatever guys who swim down and fixes oil platforms or something, your ego could kill you. So, and it's the same in some ways in trading. It can kill your account, which is a great thing about it.
Totally. And I think I suppose we kind of should position this or set expectations, and there's kind of two ways of looking at this. Namely, are you a good student of markets, which as you're talking about, but also are you just generally a good student? Okay, as a person, can you learn from people and stuff, and learn from a mentor, learn from a course, however you like to learn, because everybody pays for their education in trading, right? I've talked about this before. Everybody pays for their education in one way or another. You are either paying for it formally, or you're paying for it in time and losses and emotional capital, if you, as you say, if you're kind of self-mentored and stuff. So it helps everyone to actually be a good student. Winston Churchill had a saying that I've relied on a lot when I was younger, namely that I'm always eager to learn. I'm just not always keen to be taught. And I would say my younger self was quite like that. Certainly my younger Air Force self was like that. I was eager to learn, but I was a bit of a rebellious student and stuff and what have you. Sort of kind of a little bit of belligerent is probably a good word to describe it. But I got there in the end. When it comes to being a student yourself of trading, well, you just have to realize that you are always a student of markets, aren't you? That never really ever ends, etc. And you have to embrace it, right? You have to enjoy it. You have to actually enjoy learning about markets. Learn about markets, learn about methods, learn about money management, learn about managing self, etc. You've got to enjoy it. If you don't, I think you're gonna struggle, and your career is going to be pretty short, wouldn't you say?
I think you have to need it as much as enjoy it as well. There has to be some sort of thing that in you that you need to do this, and there's nothing else that's going to there's nothing else that's going to do for you, that you need to learn how to trade, I think. And also on top of that, I think you need to be quite disciplined, because there's so much information. You can just go on this big Grail search, forever. And there's lots of guys that I've worked with over the years that are on a Grail search for a long, long time, and they're trying out new systems, and this week it's this system, next week it's another system, you meet them in 6 months' time and it's a different system. And because the biggest part, or the most complex part of learning how to trade, is learning about yourself and learning your own psychology and learning your own personality, and seeing where your weaknesses are and seeing where your strengths are as well, to that matter, and using those because it's you at the end of the day that are either going to be successful or not successful, and it's your psychology that's going to make that big difference. And when I read an awful lot of stuff, I get text messages and comments on Facebook posts and things like that. And what you can do when you're reading them is that you can read that the person's on a Grail search. You can read their fear. You can hear their fear in it, and they're not focusing on that. They're skipping over it, and they're moving on to trying to make trading technically safer by finding the better system, where instead of dealing with themselves, because change in yourself is really, really difficult. And I think that change only happens when there's some you either have to change for some particular reason, if you got sick, or there was some reason that you were in some situation where you had to change, then that's one thing. or else what should be with trading is that there should be some motivation that's pulling you forward. Like you believe that you're going to be successful and make money and live the life that you've always wanted to do. So it's and then if you can, then that hopefully will bring about change, and then you have to maintain that change, because what I've seen an awful lot of times happening with people over a lifetime with various things is that they make a change for a period of time. If you say to somebody, if you look at somebody that they weren't particularly secure in themselves, and then they go out and they learn how to be secure in themselves, and then over time it starts to fade away. It's making the change and making and maintaining a change is really quite a difficult thing. And I think it's exactly the same in trading, because trading comes down to you. Probably, if you've been in trading for 2 years or 3 years, you probably actually know what to do, but you're too afraid to do it. That's what ends up happening an awful lot of the time, I find, with a lot of traders, including myself from time to time. Because most traders are right in direction. Like 62% of new traders are right on direction. So if you have an appropriate stop loss, you can enter a trade and make money. It's as simple as that. You'll make money 62% of the time, and that's more than enough. Enough money is enough to make whatever you want to make and to live the life you want to live, and all those types of things. And it's only fear that tends to be holding them back. And the analogy I was using, I wrote something during the week, was if you were in a skyscraper that was on fire and somebody puts out a plank into another skyscraper from one window to the other window, you're going to be terrified to walk across that plank, but you know that that's what you have to do. That's the right course of action. And a lot of the time, I think, especially at the beginning with trading, is that you know what the right course of action is. It's just putting one foot in front of the other, but you're just too afraid to do it, or you find some other thing, some other excuse why you can't do it. And that's a lot of things, and I think it's the same with an awful lot of things in life. You generally know what to do.
Yeah,
are you just too afraid to do it and to have that for whatever reason? And the last thing I say about that is that what I find an awful lot of the time with trading psychology books and trading psychology in general is that it's too narrow a focus. So it's showing you, you have to enter trade, you have to feel this way about the thing, or you have to feel that way about the thing, which is a useful piece of information. But if you have something from your childhood that makes you absolutely petrified of success or absolutely petrified of failure, then that's something that has to be addressed. And that generally won't be addressed by just the narrow focus of your trading psychology. That has to be something that's in yourself, about your value, about lessons you've learned as a young child. There are things you learn as a young child. By about 8 or 9 years old, you have survival mechanisms that are going to be part of your life, and those survival mechanisms can come about in trading, and they can interfere with it. It's and those have to be dealt with. You have to believe you're worth the money. You have to believe that you're worth the success. You have to feel that the attention that gets thrust on you for being successful, which might all be in your mind, is something that you can deal with and can deserve. And that's why I think sometimes that I find a lot of trading psychology books are just a little bit narrow in their focus. Basically.
Fair enough. That's interesting. That's interesting to me. I would agree with you in the sense of that. Maybe I'm being a bit one-dimensional here, but I'm a great believer that change only occurs, or meaningful change only occurs, when it comes from within. And so that links into you need to want to be motivated to change in the same way that you really do need to be motivated to want to give up on cigarettes or drugs or alcohol, etc. That sort of change has to come from within. And if it isn't there, you'll either not follow through on it, or you'll resent it, or you'll fight against it, etc. And so, if you are fighting against yourself, or you're fighting against learning, or you're fighting against being a good student, you might want to spend a bit of time reflecting upon, well, where does that come from? Why is that there and stuff? And so, Interestingly, this is a bit of, well, it's a segue, but but it is relevant and stuff. So it just came out when thinking about when you were talking about there before in terms of change. So a good few years ago, a good few years back now, I had a date with a lass who had a couple of dates with a lass who she was just finished up. She'd been working in the prison service as a something to do with reoffenders, basically teaching people in prisons to to be good humans, etc., and to be good members of society and what have you. And I was curious as to like how much time, energy, and resource got spent on this, and apparently an awful lot of time, energy, and resource gets spent on it. And then I was curious to sort of see, well, actually, how successful were they in basically changing the reoffending rate? And there was literally little to no change, in the actual reoffending rate and stuff. So I said, we're spending all this time and energy and resources on these people who, for whatever reason, they don't want to change. It might not be a case of they can change, but it might be they just don't want to change. Whereas my view would be, why are we spending time and energy and resources on people who don't want to change? If there's somebody in there who wants to change, who basically has seen the light and has come to a point where they have desperate change, desperate to change their life trajectory, then by all means, I would throw as much time and energy and resources behind that individual, and help them in that change. But the reality is, change isn't always easy, and it's certainly not easy if the person doesn't want to change. And trying to force change on people who don't want to change, I just think it rarely ever works. What happens is you get somebody either rebellious or, as you said, it doesn't follow through and stuff. And so if you, as a trading student, all right, if you are rebelling against something or resenting it or what have you, well, then, as I said, you might want to spend a little bit of time in quiet reflection upon why. Where is that coming from? Is that your genuine best self trying to resist, or is it ego? Is it ego? Is it arrogance? Is it fear? Very often arrogance is just a mix of fear and ignorance, isn't it? But it is a case of all these elements coming out, and because actually, as I said, it's no bad thing to sort of reflect upon that in yourself, because actually you're getting an insight into who you are and actually how you operate and what you work at, and all of that. All of that will genuinely help you be, I think, a better trader and also a better human being. That kind of that element of reflecting and understanding yourself and understanding what motivates you, what are your real deepest drivers, and also what are the elements that are just like beating yourself up and stuff, hitting yourself with a stick, for whatever reason, for right or wrong reasons. As you said, it could be all sorts of, maybe it is childhood trauma, maybe it's something else, but understanding that and being honest with yourself is, I think, it's crucial in part of being a good student of not only trading but of yourself and of life. But there you go. I digress a bit there, don't I?
Yeah.
So
well, yeah.
yeah.
I think change for an awful lot of those types of things either comes down to two things. You either classify yourself as a victim. I have to give up cake. I love cake. Why do I have to give up cake? Why me, God? I love cake. Or else, you're achieving something. And the best example I can think of that is my own failed and successful journey through gyms. So at one point in my life, I used to be a real big gym bunny, and I used to be in the gym 5 days a week, and I loved it because I was achieving something and I was going in every day to do something. And the amount of self-discipline that I needed to do that was actually quite small, because, some days you kind of go, oh, I don't really feel like it, but I'll go anyway. Yeah. And then, and off you went to the gym, and that was great. And then the environment around me, that's another thing too, that is the environment around me was quite good. I had time, I was working in a relatively high paying job, as in trading, and I had no child at the time, and I had quite a lot of time. So there was a good environment around me to do that. And that made that change relatively easy. And then over time, then it goes to, oh Jesus, do I have to really go? It starts to be a cost. There's a cost inflicted by trying to do something, and that means that if there's a cost, you'll eventually fall back to having to use self-discipline, and self-discipline is something that runs out. I'm not a believer in self-discipline at all, because I think it's it's something you can use for a period of time, but nobody has the energy in their life to do that continuously, to use that discipline. And when you see all these people on talking about trading or lifestyle or any of those types of things, I think on YouTube channels, and they're talking about self-discipline. Self-discipline is not a long-term strategy. The only long-term strategy is that you either adapt to change to do whatever you want to do, or you're just not going to succeed at it. It's just not going to work for you. The next thing I was going to say then is a lot of the times when I'm reading, because I've read tons of stuff on trading psychology, because that's my real thing. That's my real interest in trading is not the technical side of it. It's the psychological side of it, because the difference between me, like I have a lot of pro trader friends, and some of my pro trader friends make a lot of money, and we're all trading the same time frames. We're all using the same tools. And we're all, I wouldn't say similarly experienced. Some of them have maybe 5 years more, 10 years more experience than I do. But its psychology is completely different in different people. You can see them that they're what they want. Some people want to make a living, want to make a good living out of it. Some people want to have, my trader friends want to have time. They want to be time rich, and that's which is the thing that suits me really at the moment. Is rather than money, time richness is a huge big thing with it. And I find that a real big thing. And then the other thing I was going to say with trading psychology concepts, when you're reading them and you're not that experienced in trading, and you kind of go, that's a very interesting concept. You don't really understand it until you're actually using it. You've learned it. It's been internalized. It's like risk control or something like that. It becomes an internal thing, and then you go back and you reread, I don't know, Trading in the Zone or one of the classics, and then you kind of read it in this completely different way, where you actually you've learned it, and it's part of you, and it's one of the more difficult things when you're starting off to learn, is because you're reading these cold concepts and you logically understand them, but they don't make any change in how you think. So you still operate in the same way. And then when your thinking does change, these concepts, you really internalize them, and it's a completely different level of understanding. So I found that quite a big thing. So it's.
Sorry, I was just going to say, quick, say that is also a reflection of your journey. So I've read Trading in the Zone probably at least 10 times. All right. I used to have it in my trading plan to reread it every year. And every time you read it, you are at a different level of understanding trading yourself. And so you take different things from the book, and so I always tell people read it, and then once you've read it, reread it again, and then get 10 reads of it under you, because as you develop as a trader, your knowledge and understanding and the where and the why and the how it resonates with you will change as you develop as a trader and stuff. So you're definitely right there. Okay, as you develop as a human, as a trader, and as you do go through some change, whether you notice it or not, you operate at different levels. You take different things from different pieces, don't you?
You do, yeah, but possibly it's how I would access information might be slightly different, because I'm dyslexic for one thing. So reading is not something that's not a fun activity for me. That's not something, I read a book on holidays, and that's the one book outside of stuff that I have to read for work that I'll probably read this year. So I tend to be much more visual, and I tend to be much more listening. So I much rather sit down and listen to an audiobook or listen to somebody on YouTube who's quite good at talking about psychology, and listen to them. And that's how I would access information. Now, I think everybody should read Trading in the Zone, as you say, 10 times. I probably read it 10 times myself now. It's sitting over there on my shelf. But perhaps there is a thing that I just access information in a slightly different way. I mean, I'm in trading because it's visual. I don't have to. Like, I trained as an accountant for 3 years, and it was terrible. And because it was completely the wrong profession for me to be in. because it just doesn't suit. I just make mistakes. I make, if I sit down and I write anything, anybody's read anything that I've written that hasn't been, AI corrected or something like that is going to notice that I miss words and all that kind of stuff. So I had the same problem when I went into to be trained as an accountant. I was just horrendous. I would make mistakes here and then, make mistakes there. And I found that, and so trading appealed to me for the very simple reason is that I just look at charts and I can see patterns and I can see all those types of things. And it all makes sense to me. And I find it relatively straightforward in that sort of thing. And then the only other thing that I had to sort out was my own psychology. And that's really the ongoing thing that I spend 99% of my time when I'm working on trading, on working on psychology and thinking about psychology, not the stock market itself. The stock market itself is almost perennial. It just keeps working. It just does the same things again and again and again. And I think unless AI makes some horrendously big changes to how the stock market works, and it will make some changes and it has made some changes, but I don't think that it's going to cut out complete access to people. It's the psychology that makes the big difference, and it's accepting things and behaviors. So trading psychology is accepting behaviors that you have to do that seem completely nuts and scary to you. Like I was trading yesterday, I was trading shorts yesterday at the beginning of the day. And I was trading shorts because I did an initial long and then I was trading the shorts, but I was trading the shorts because the long had been front run. And it was under 2 points. It was like 1.5 or like 7 ticks or something, or 6 ticks, something like that. And that doesn't make sense because you have price going up, but you're going the other way. And I got into a trade in a short trade, and just basically sat in it, even though it was going against me, because I had a belief that it was going to do something else. I was initially proved right, but that's something that just doesn't make sense, and it's a scary thing to do. It's a scary thing to be in a trade that's going against you, but yet you have a belief in it, and you believe that this is, and it's not an ego belief. It's a belief in a system. It's a belief that this isn't right, and this front run has to be addressed, and it was addressed absolutely perfectly later on. And I got into the double bottom yesterday, and that went up whatever it was, 100 ticks or something, and I got 100 points, or something like that. I should really look and check, and I got 35 out of it, and I had 35, and I was tickled pink. And I closed the trade because I had to get on with the rest of my evening, which again is another psychological thing. Like because I couldn't babysit it. I couldn't spend time with my family yesterday evening and babysit a trade.
Yeah.
So I chose to exit the trade, and go and do something else for the evening, because I already had quite a really successful day. And it was successful enough like that, basically, between the shorts and the longs of yesterday. The rest of the week doesn't matter to me anymore. I can do what I want. I have no pressure, basically, for the rest of the week, because I've had enough success already. And that's a nice position to be in, because again, isn't it nice? Yeah. But it's also a psychological thing, because what I'm talking about, I have no pressure for the rest of the week. It isn't that it's that's my psychology. At the end of the day, I do not feel stressed. It's an emotion that I'm bringing into the stock market, which is something I don't need. I shouldn't be doing. I shouldn't have emotions in that way. But I'm still human. So
yeah, you're still human. All right.
Yeah.
So let's get back on track and stuff in terms of one other aspect of it that you and I are we both mentored traders throughout the years as well. So I suppose another interpretation of the question is, are you a good trading student, in terms of what makes a good student? All right, I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of students, and I've admitted before, I do formal mentoring and education for people, but just sharing insight into my experience over the years, etc. In terms of, I will normally have a chat with somebody before we sort of work together, and invariably that allows me the opportunity to also understand if that person is going to be a good student. Because if they're not going to be a good student for reasons that we've talked about earlier, well, then actually, my time, energy, and resource, I'd sooner spend it with with a student who actually is dedicated to being the best trader they can be. Very often what I find is that there are some people who want a coach, but they want a coach as a blame hound. They basically what they're not good. They'll listen to you but ignore you, just do what you want, and then blame you when it doesn't work. And I'm quite good at sort of identifying those kind of folks pretty early on in a conversation, to the point where I actually that those aren't kind of the individuals I want to particularly work with. Whereas what does make good students, all right, is invariably, I don't expect someone to be perfect. I don't expect someone to be profitable. I don't expect someone to be ideal. But what we do want to see, or certainly I want to see, is the fact that they're doing it for the right reasons. Okay, they're not just basically in a crappy situation in their lives and stuff and hoping that trading is going to bail them out of that, because that rarely ever works as a strategy. And that's, like, as I said, that's next week's hope is not a strategy. But seeing people who are dedicated to the craft, who actually want to become the best trader they can be, who are doing things like managing risk, they are keeping records. Okay, that is just a good starting point. As I said, you don't need to basically be perfect, but to be a good student, you need to basically to demonstrate that you have an ability to basically to debrief your trades, and also to be in a position to talk about them without feeling defensive or without feeling criticized. And then also recognizing that, if you're repeating the same mistakes again and again and again, then something needs to be addressed. All right, we all make mistakes. We're human beings. Okay, myself, and you've said yourself, we make mistakes, but part of it is, A, can you capture them as quickly as possible, and B, make sure that you're just not repeating them, frequently, and if possible, not at all, or what have you, and showing that, okay, showing a dedication to that. These are the sort of things that basically, start to make for a good student. Namely, also, accepting extreme responsibility for your trades, right? You mentioned earlier about people, either they want to be based on achievement or they're based on victimhood. When you start hearing people blaming the market or blaming others or blaming, the EA trading bot they bought for $49 off the market, blaming that for all their woes and stuff, is just, that is not an indication of you being a good trading student. All right. So, and there's probably more to it. And what I've started to do is, for those of you who are regular readers and what have you, regular listeners, etc., I try to put up a little bit of follow-up collateral, okay, just a few points, etc., for the last few there that people can access, hopefully just to help them just make a little bit more of that. And I'll try and do that for this particular session as well. But, what makes you a good student is things like, keeping a learning journal, right? Seeking constructive feedback. Okay. I had my own experience, at the start of my career with a couple of mentors. Some were really good, some not so, and you start to learn what particularly works, and being able to seek constructive feedback is a real bonus. And the ability to understand and commit to the process over the outcome. Right? Everybody wants to make money. Everybody wants winning trades. Okay, we all get it. But once you've traded for a while, you realize that actually, it is the process that's key, and you need to understand the process. You need to have one, and you need to commit to it. So that would be my kind of, like, off the cuff, my kind of elements that go into making someone a good student. Any points to add?
Yeah. So generally, when I mentor people, what I'm mentoring them through is fear. That's because I don't tend to work with spam new traders, because I think there's enough people out there, there's enough resources out there for them to go out and find enough, get their basic information together, and then go to trading. So when they turn up with me, it's generally the problem is fear. And when I'm in my initial conversation with them, I'm just looking for what type of fear that they feel, because that's nearly what it always amounts down to. Because they should be at a stage where they know what I'm dealing with them, because I do it for free as well. So when so I really can pick and choose, and they need to be at a position where they know what they're doing, but it's just not working, and it always tends to be fear. One of the frustrating thing when you start off with somebody as a student is that they tend, as especially men more than women. Women have their own issues, but men have the issue of ego. So they have to be seen. They want you to see them as. They don't want to be seen as less powerful, whatever. That they don't know what they're doing. So an awful lot of the time they come in, explain what they're doing, and expect you, because they want your respect, or something, or they want your acknowledgement or something like that during the process. And that sort of, like, I tend to cut them down over that very quickly, because if you're coming to me, you're coming with a problem. So let's deal with the problem. The fact that you have that problem is normal. Everybody goes through because most of the processes that you go through in trading are almost all exactly the same for everyone. It's just which one will you falter at, and how long is it going to take you to get over that issue? So let's just cut the shit basically and get to the issue and fix the issue, and not pat you on the head and tell you that your ego is protected. How they expect the process to go. So an awful lot, and especially newer guys, tend to think that the process is that you're going to show them some chart pattern, and that they can now take that chart pattern, go into the market, and recycle, and do the whole trade again and again and again. And that's all that they need to do. And they get sorely disappointed when they find out that there's more to it than that. Because if the market was like that, you would just build a bot and park a dump truck behind your house full of money. So they have an idea how the system is going to go, which is false, and you have to work your way through that system, through that with them. You have to keep your own. Like, everybody has their own foibles in trading and their own way of doing things, and you sort of have to be very careful as a mentor to keep that out of it. Are they intelligent enough? That's sounds like a thing where you shouldn't really be judging people based on some personal aspect of themselves. But some people just ain't got it, and they're never going to have it. They're just not built to be traders. They just haven't got they haven't got the level of intelligence or the type of intelligence that works for trading. And that's, it's unpopular in the modern society to sort of point that out to people, but some people are just thick and boring, and they just ain't going nowhere. And that's nothing I can do about that. Talk to your parents about their DNA. Why are they in it? Why are they in it?
Should we just leave it on that? Yeah, Alan Partridge way, on that bombshell, ladies and gentlemen. We've run on a little bit, and we're always trying to sort of cut them down a little bit on season 3. So yeah, Alan Partridge-esque on that bombshell, ladies and gentlemen. So I suppose it's a case of, listen, being a trader means that you are going to be a lifelong student yourself. Because markets are the kind of the toughest teacher you'll ever face, short of physical warfare, I would say. They are patient when you're not. They're unforgiving when you're looking for forgiveness, and they will give you the same lesson like over and over until you finally learn it. So the question you've got to ask yourself is, are you willing to learn, or are you willing to be taught, and if not, why not? And if so, well then, fair play to you, good for you, right? Good luck in your journey. Any final points there yourself, Ian?
Well, the last point I was going to make about why people, one of the things when you're mentoring people, why you have to work out if they're in it, is why they're in it. Yeah. there was a guy I was on a course one time, and this guy was on the same course, and we were talking about, and I was trading already. I was a trader already at the time, and I was just listening to him, and and I was talking about buying earnings gaps, and I said I'd look for stock with blowout earnings in an uptrend in a good market with one of the words of earning surprise or blowout earnings, something like that, within the first two lines of their earning report, or of the report that was on about the earnings, and then look for an entry. And he was like, and he said the words were, "How could you lose at that?" But what he meant to us, he was in trading for excitement. He wasn't in trading to make money. So you sort of have to work that whole thing out. Like it's why they're in it. Because if they're in it for the wrong reasons, if you're in trading for excitement, do the lottery. You'd be just faster.
Exactly.
And that's it.
Yeah, nice one, Ian. All right, so thank you so much for those of you who stay with us till the end. And as always, thanks for the likes and the comments, etc. Make sure you're subscribing. All right, we appreciate it. We do appreciate all the feedback. As I said, next week is going to be TOGS 46, which kind of, in some ways, I suppose, does lead on a little bit from this. Hope is not a strategy, so why are you relying on it? I hope you'll join us for that. As always, thanks to Big Ian there in Dublin and such. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, have a fabulous trading week, and we'll look to speak to you soon, everybody. Take care and trade well. Cheers.